Afternoon, everybody. I wish I could say more than an Albanian, but I'll greet you in my native tongue, which is Bosnian. Dobrodošli, hvala. So we have a great panel of what this agenda should be really like. So I'm so excited, first of all, and honored. And I'm really also emotional from this morning with the mothers of Srebrenica, but we have somebody from the Kosovo government who is the deputy prime minister from the Bosniak community. And so such an honor, velika čast. Then we have a judge from the Constitutional Court in Kosovo. And then we have somebody from Germany who is at the German Foreign Ministry. Then we have a distinguished researcher from too many research institutions, and I'll do this again when each are speaking. And then we have a media representative. So it's really such a cross-sectional set of perspectives we will share on these topics. But as friends are coming in, and in the interest of time, we are going to start with the video message from Daphne O, who is the French ambassador for international women's issues. So can we please play the video?
Madam President of the Kosovo, Excellencies, dear ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would like to extend my warm thanks to the government of Kosovo for hosting for the third time the International Forum on Women, Peace and Security. This meeting gives us a unique opportunity to talk about women and girls in conflicts and crisis. As we mark the 25th anniversary after the adoption of Resolution 1325, and witnessing unprecedented polarization and uncertainties rooted in climate, humanitarian, economic, and political crisis, we would like to reiterate our strong commitment to gender equality and women's rights in conflict-affected contexts and beyond. According to the UN, between 1992 and 2019, women accounted for just 6% of mediators and 13% of negotiators in peace talks. Women make up only 30% of civilian personnel in UN peacekeeping operations. Women and girls are also deterred from talking and being exposed because of the harassment they face. Nearly 60% of women and girls report having been victims of online violence, including surveillance, intimidation, harassment, and spread of disinformation. And in 2023, the United Nations drew an alarming picture of conflict-related sexual violence, which would have seen a spectacular increase of, and I quote, 50% on the previous year. Implementing the Women, Peace and Security agenda in all its pillars, prevention, protection, and participation, remains essential in a world where conflicts and crises are on the rise. And even more since we collectively want to eradicate all forms of gender-based violence. As part of its feminist diplomacy, France took a series of measures to ensure that women's impactful role is duly taken into account during crisis and conflicts. For instance, we launched our new international strategy for feminist foreign policy for the period 2025-2030 on March 7th. This strategy places gender equality and women's and girls' rights at the very center of every single aspect of our foreign policy. Trade, environment, finance, education, culture, and peace and security
support
as
fund
well.
For feminist organizations.
In order to address these issues concretely, we have been contributing to several initiatives to promote the Women, Peace and Security agenda in our feminist foreign policy. For France, it is paramount to support the role and contribution of feminist civil society organizations on the ground. Through our support fund for feminist organizations, we provide support to feminist civil society organizations, including on WPS agenda in Cameroon, Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Benin, Togo, RCI, DRC, CAR, Guinea, Iraq, Lebanon, Palestinian territories, Jordan, with, for instance, a €11.5 million project led by the French Development Agency. Since its launch in 2020, after the French presidency of G7, we have supported over 1,400 women's rights organizations, including grassroots, in 73 countries. According to OECD, this mechanism makes France one of the leading countries in terms of funding for feminist organizations. We also believe that access to justice and reparations for survivors is vital for strengthening women's participation in peace processes. This is why we support the Global Survivors Fund on conflict-related sexual violence, a G7 initiative led by Dr. Mukwege and Nadia Murad, the two Peace Nobel Prize winners, to which we contributed 17 million euros over the period 2020-2025. This fund has done remarkable work to provide assistance and reparations in different contexts, such as the DRC, Ukraine, Iraq, Nepal, or Cambodia. We are now a proud member of the UN Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, as we have pledged 4.5 million euros to support feminist civil society organizations in crisis zones. This partnership is aligned with our broader goals of promoting gender equality, conflict prevention, and peace building. For instance, we support initiatives such as the Women in Climate Security Program, which recognizes the disproportionate impact of climate change on women and girls, which is an integral part of the WPS agenda. To prevent all forms of gender-based violence, France contributes to raising awareness and training foreign armed forces. We do encourage the integration of a gender perspective into the planning, the execution, and evaluation of peacekeeping operation. We also support the training and deployment of gender military advisors on the field. To promote the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in peacemaking and peace-building efforts, France hosted the Women in Cyber program in September 2023 in the Western Balkans Cyber Capacity Center in Montenegro. This training aimed at improving women policymakers and diplomat skills on cyber issues. The fight against gender-based disinformation is a very important issue for France, as we have launched another initiative, the Laboratory for Women's Rights Online. This is also why France supports the implementation of the CEDAW General Recommendation 40 on the participation of women to all decision-making systems, including in peacetime. We must ensure that women have a meaningful seat at the negotiation table if we want to guarantee lasting and sustainable peace. Peace cannot happen without giving the opportunity to half of a country's population to express their views. To do so, national action plans and regional action plans implementing the Women, Peace and Security agenda are critical. This is why France is currently implementing its third National Action Plan for the 2021-2025 period. And on the 25th year of Resolution 1325, we are recommitted to Women, Peace and Security agenda by drafting our fourth NAP for the 2026-2030 period. This plan will tackle new challenges, such as artificial intelligence and the digital environment, climate change, and disarmament. We do encourage all countries to adopt such plans and to share ideas and good practices that benefits all women, men, and children. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, Kosovo's commitment towards women and children and the international community inspires us all. We need more dialogue to ensure that women remain a key priority and that no one is left behind, to quote the UN Secretary General. I would like to seize the occasion to reiterate France's commitment to multilateralism and gender equality. This is why, finally, I look forward to seeing you in Paris in October at the 4th Ministerial Feminist Foreign Policies Conference. This major global event will gather governments, private sector, and civil society organizations to boost engagements towards gender equality, as well as to the Women, Peace and Security agenda. Merci beaucoup.
This distinguished panel to discuss why peace needs women as well as children. So as mentioned already, we have a great set of wonderful speakers, and we'll try to do 2 rounds of remarks, hopefully get a few questions. So I'll just very briefly introduce them, and then we'll turn to the first question. So right next to me is Her Excellency Deputy Prime Minister of Kosovo for Minority Rights, representing the Bosniak community, and as I mentioned, she will speak in Bosnian, so those of you who might need translation, be ready, but I'm so proud that you're here. Next is judge from Kosovo, Remzije Istrefi, who is the judge at the Constitutional Court, but also has a distinguished academic career and teaches at the law faculty. And I had asked her, because it's my privilege as a moderator, the topic of my failed dissertation was on transitional justice. So importance of dealing with the traumas that both of our nations have experienced. Next, we have Her Excellency Gesa Breutingem from Germany, German Foreign Ministry, where she directs human rights and global health issues, and obviously oversees the important contribution of German embassies and German funding mechanisms to women, peace and security agenda, including on the issues of peace processes. Then we go to Dr. Julia Palik, who is a fellow at the UN Disarmament, you will say it correctly, but the UN has a research institute on disarmament, and she's also affiliated with my another academic crush called PRIO, which stands for Peace and Research Institute in Oslo, where she had done great work on disarmament and conflict reoccurrence, something again sadly that our region is struggling with in this very moment. And then last but not least, definitely we go over the pond, over the ocean to Canada. Émilie Nicolas writes for, I don't know if it's digital only, but it's called Detour in Canada, where she also has gotten quite recognition for not just using the digital media, but focusing on these issues of gender empowerment and participation. So as you can see, very rich set of panels. So we'll start with the Deputy Prime Minister, and really the first question is a broad issue of how can peace processes benefit from women's participation, and especially what does women's leadership offer for the next generation, because we all were so inspired by the young people of this morning, and equally inspired from mothers of Srebrenica to ensure, as Kara Hotić said, we stood up and we survived. So how can we ensure that those things continue to get support in a place like Kosovo, which is such a great example, using its Center of Excellence to host us? So, Madam Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mirsad. It's a big honor for me to be with you, and I will continue in my language. Meni je velika čast biti danas ovde sa mojim uvaženim panelistima o jednoj temi koja dotiče sve nas, koja dotiče svaki naš dom, svaku našu sredinu, svaku našu instituciju, i u granicama mojih nekih životnih iskustava svih ovih godina koje dotiču vremenski period pre rata, tokom rata, posle rata i funkcionisanje preko nevladinog sektora kada je u pitanju diskriminacija i emancipacija manjinskih zajednica u novom kosovskom sistemu, i sada u politici kao neko koji je akter u sferi promena ženskih prava u našoj zemlji, i kao roditelj, kao žena koja ima 3 dece, koja se susreće sa svakodnevnim problemima, razbijajući stereotipe o raznim predrasudama i na etničkoj osnovi, i na nacionalnoj osnovi, i na religijskoj osnovi, kao neko ko veruje u fundament ljudskih prava i čoveka kao ljudskog bića, bez obzira kakav je, šta je, odakle je. Jako je bitno da svi mi budemo akteri i podržimo ovu našu konferenciju, koja već postaje tradicionalna svih ovih godina, koju organizuje naša predsjednica gospođa Vjosa Osmani, koja je posvećena miru, stabilnosti i prosperitetu Kosova kao jednoj mladoj demokratskoj zemlji koja je prošla kroz sve strahote rata i gradi jedno normalno, stabilno društvo u kojem ima prostora za svakog njenog građanina. U tom duhu želim da se zahvalim svima koji su deo ove konferencije, ne samo ovog panela, ispred Vlade Republike Kosovo, ispred naše države, zato što razne životne priče, razne profesionalne priče jednostavno vode nas kroz život i uče nas da jednostavno ne pravimo greške koje je možda neko namerno, svesno ili nesvesno uradio, a žrtve su ogromne. Tako da ova tema danas koja prevazilazi, znači pre svega i politiku, i nacije, i granice, a koja je posvećena ulozi žena u očuvanju mira, je od prioritetne važnosti za sve nas. Tako da mi kao društvo koje stabilno gradi svoju demokratsku konstrukciju i baznu rekonstrukciju, postulate jedne nove države koja ne vidi svoj put osim alternative da ide prema putu evropskih integracija i NATO savezu, gradeći uz to dobrosusedske odnose sa svim našim komšijama. Vidim ženu kao faktor stabilnosti, kao faktor mira, vidim ženu kao deo tih promena koje dotiču svako naše društvo. Jako mi je drago da već ovaj forum postaje prepoznatljiv ne samo na Balkanu, nego i u svetu i da Kosovo čvrstim koracima ide napred.
Hvala. Thank you, Madam Deputy Prime Minister, for this strong statement of political support in this young nation. So we'll stay in Kosovo and we'll go to Đađođe, please.
No, I think we are okay now. Well, Honorable Chair, dear panelists, and dear participants, friends, students, colleagues, thank you for honoring us. Thank you for being in this very relevant conference. I think that I think that there is no better forum than this one to state that, yes, peace needs women and children. I would say that we should no longer ask whether women and children belong to the peace processes, but we have to state firmly, yes, peace processes need women and children. And the reasons are many, but above all, peace-building processes need women and children because they are disproportionately affected during the war, but also in the post-conflict reconstruction, they are left aside. So that's why we have to state firmly from this forum that we need to involve women and children as well. So this is my firm statement. While I was preparing myself to join this distinguished panel, regrettably, the research in the aspect of women's participation in peace-building processes is not so updated. I found some of the research that is as late as 2018. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe my colleagues who are here are better positioned than me to inform us if there is any other research, but United Nations and World Bank in 2018 provided us with a research stating that the level of women participation in negotiation of peace is very low. However, it is very positive, the findings of this research, that they point out to the relevance of inclusion of women in peace-building processes and peace negotiations. In fact, the statistics show from the research that peace agreements can last longer if women are involved in the peace-building process. Peace agreements include more human rights standards in the agreement, so substantially women contribute more. Peace agreements, when women are integrate more guarantees for children. So all these and many other aspects inform us that women should be integrated and involved more in the peace-building processes. However, we have to be sincere to ourselves. Very often we see that women are represented in peace-building processes. However, it is of a question if they are able to leave a mark in the power relationship, male-dominated decision-making. So in that sense, we have to be very open and sincere and to point out to the real problems. But one thing is for sure, we need to involve women so that they protect themselves, they invest in sustainable peace, but also they protect children, considering the fact that children cannot by themselves participate in peace negotiation. What we have seen so far, for instance, there are some good examples when women have been integrated in negotiation of peace, like in Liberia, for instance, in Colombia, and also in Northern Ireland, but also we see the efforts of women of Srebrenica, women in Kosovo who, although not included directly in the peace-building processes, they have left such a great mark and they have made such incredible changes. For instance, just to mention the fact that women in Kosovo, civil society activists and individuals have resulted with the recognition of legal recognition and legal protections of conflict-related sexual violence survivors. And this is all due to the joining the forces of women leaders, but also civil society activists. So this is related to peace building, and I hope that we will have some more time to discuss about the involvement of women and children in peace building negotiations more than ever now, because we see that the geopolitics are not in favor of us, so that's why there is a need to rethink this aspect. My honorable chair also posed a suggestion that I should speak also about the topic why we need transitional justice processes, especially in the Western Balkan countries, considering the fact that societies in this region have undergone through very traumatic and very systematic human rights violations, which have left a mark in the societies. And it was very interesting for me to listen to the previous respected panel when they spoke about the intergenerational trauma and all effects. Myself, being a professor at the University of Pristina, at the law school, which is the biggest university and oldest university in Kosovo, I would like to share some of the work that we have done at the law school related to transitional justice processes, knowing and recognizing the relevance of the role of universities in dealing with the past. And in that sense, I'm proudly informing you that we have established a center for dealing with the past, Center for Transitional Justice, which develops activities, awareness raising, conferences, and workshops for the students. But above all, I would like to share the information with all of you. We have a master program on transitional justice, international criminal law, and human rights, which is a program that has been developed together with international experts. The program is in English language, and I can proudly say that we have students from all over the region, including from Serbia, Macedonia, Africa, and other countries. The program is being supported, of course, implemented by University of Pristina, respectively from the Faculty of Law, but it is being supported by Council of Europe and different embassies, because we are co-teaching the program. So we co-teach together with professors that come from all over the world who have experience in teaching these kind of programs. And we are very proud that the third generation will be registered this year, so I kindly ask you to spread the news and whoever is interested to come and study with us. So thank you very much. I'll stop
Excellent.
here.
Thank you so much, and a good concrete invitation to come back to Kosovo. We're now going to Germany and Ambassador Brütingen.
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to thank the President of Kosovo also for organizing this wonderful conference again. I think it is really a hallmark and very well worth participating in it again, like last year. And I also want to thank my dear co-panelists and of course the dear audience for joining us today on this topic. I think, well, the need for inclusive peace processes, we all know about it. And we know this, to have a sustainable peace, we need all of society to participate and to have their interest being taken care of. Yet we also know reality. And I have some figures on that. That was the UN Secretary General's annual WPS report last year in October. And he said that from the over 50 processes indicated in 2012 2023, on average, women made up only 9.6% of negotiators, 13.7% of mediators, and 26% of signatories to peace agreements and ceasefire agreements. So, if you take the Colombia peace process out, it drops dramatically, because that was really an inclusive, as you said, an inclusive process. We need women, and please allow me to give, and also the perspective of children to be taken into account more. Please allow me to give you 3 examples. The first is from my father. My father was 12 at the end of World War II. We heard stories as children and stories in the family. There were funny stories sometimes from after the war. I only realized what impact it had on him was when I was in my teenage years, and I realized during the NATO exercises that took place in Lower Saxony in autumn, my father couldn't sleep. He did not sleep for a week. And when I asked him, he just said, you know, these are the tanks that go through the village, because they moved them during the night not to stop traffic during the day. It's the sound of the tanks on cobblestone. That were the Russians entering Berlin at the end of the war. I know, this is not the Russians, I know all of that, but I can't sleep. It all comes back. And this was decades later, decades. The second example, and he had these triggers, and he mentioned sometimes small pieces when I recall it, but we never asked. So it really needed that kind of trigger and a precise question for him to tell, and to tell a little bit more about what he had seen. So one of the advices I always would say within peace process, we need to listen very, very carefully, because with people who have lived through trauma, it's very difficult to detect and really to make them be able to speak about what they have seen or experienced. The second example is from a project we did as Germany. We are supporting networks worldwide, and one of them is a network of peace mediators in the Horn of Africa. I met with them for forming this network, because we supported them separately, but they met from all of the Horn of Africa. Interesting part, all women, most of them with judicial background, but not all of them. They actually work with civil society. They all told the same stories. Women are the ones who negotiate on the local level. They are getting the task from their communities to negotiate local peace agreements. They're also made responsible if something does not work. Once it comes to the upper echelons, they're being pushed aside. And one of the stories that was quite interesting, because they had similar stories, was they said, well, we had a regional agreement, and there were 2 warlords who were actually fighting bitterly and trying to reach an agreement. And they were fighting about a specific valley. And when the women asked, why are you caring so much about this valley? They said, well, it's about the water. And the women just said, the water is gone. The wells are dry for long, long time. We know where the water is, but you never ask us. So they have knowledge because they work with the communities that is never really taking account of. And the third example is from our Ukraine Recovery Conference Germany organized last spring, so spring 24. It was very interesting because we really had to insist that women were actually included in all of the different, not only the panels, but the work streams. And it was very clear, the women who participated, and especially the ones who went abroad with their children, said, if you start a reconstruction process where it's only about the workplaces, rebuilding the factories, this is all important, rebuilding infrastructure is important. But don't forget about the schools, about everything like kindergarten, because if that is not there, we will not bring our children back. We will not come back. So these are 3 examples, very, very concrete, and I would like to add what we try to do in Germany is we try to actually be as concrete as possible. One of them is, and it seems to be ridiculous, but we need to insist. In each and every process, we need to ask, where are the women? Include the women and include all the perspectives. We support the networks. I already mentioned that. We are now working on our 4th National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, and we try to make it very concrete, also with bilateral programs. We are now leading the Peace Building Commission in the UN, and we really aim to ensure that WPS remains a core cross-cutting topic on the PBC's agenda, so that it's not forgotten. And last but not least, the children. The children are quite often forgotten, and they are, if they are there, sometimes they are not even having a legal identity, if they are born in a wartime situation, if they are children born out of sexual violence, they lack proper schooling, they then lack a social identity. So if we don't take their perspective and their interest into account, we will actually put the seeds for the next conflict. I would leave it with that. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, and thanks for that personal touch, because you spoke about this intergenerational perspective from Germany back then to Ukraine now, because these women are not going to back, but also how the programs need to take care of this longer-term intergenerational view. The scourge of war stays in our communities through the effect of the arms. And as we know, sadly, in our communities, not only landmines, but all forms of small arms and light weapons. So the issue of disarmament is such a key pillar of these conversations. So we'll go to Julia for those reflections.
Hopefully this is working now. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you so much for the opportunity to being here. It's a magnificent experience to visit Kosovo with a very specific history, and it's an honor to learn from the experiences that have been taking place here. In the interest of time, I thought that I can summarize in 3 points what I would like you to take away from this brief speech that I prepared, and showing how what is sometimes I think can be considered as quite a boring undertaking, working in research and in academia, can nevertheless significantly contribute to how we understand these processes, simply because we are able to put it into numbers, right? And once you have numbers, you are able to go to governments, to go to donor countries, and to advocate for change, because now it is rooted in empirical reality. So let me start by one stark fact, is that data gathered by our colleagues show that in 2023, 600 million women lived close to conflict, meaning in 50-kilometer zone next to a conflict zone. The corresponding number in the same year for children is 437 million children. To translate it, this is 1 in every 6 child lives in close proximity to conflict. I don't think I need to list the potential implications of this. On the one hand, this is just to show the extent of how women and children are impacted by war, and on the other hand of this equation, we have the staggering numbers that have been referenced previously related to the very low level of women's involvement in peace processes. And as it was alluded to previously, the reason, we have this question right in the panel, why peace needs women? I think this is a pretty obvious answer, and then when it comes to research results, we know that peace agreements that involve women negotiators tend to have, as it was explained, more provisions also related to children, and they tend to last longer, and the implementation rate of such agreements are higher. But the main question is not really why peace needs women, but how women can effectively be involved in peace processes. And research has demonstrated that it actually happens through organization. Civil society groups who are involved in the drafting of peace processes result in more so-called gender-sensitive peace agreement, that is, they contain more provisions related to the well-being of women. And to address the last point is that maybe it's also time to talk about which women we include in peace processes, because we tend to talk about women as a homogeneous group, and my heart is super full to look around here, the diversity of women who are police, women who are part of the army. There are several women that I have had the privilege to work with who are part of liberation armed movements, who are fighting for something else. Their needs are different than someone from a middle upper class family. And by joining together, these women can advocate for a truly specific peace agreement. I leave it here, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
So much, and that important call for intersectionality, and I think that's such a good issue you brought up, which is also class, because often we look at ethnic, or in our case here, religion, etc., but class and representation is key in the peace processes. We will end with Emily and the perspective from the media.
Good afternoon. You asked me, or you asked the panel to include the perspective of children. I will begin with children. My work as a journalist and an opinion writer, writing about human rights issues, is to try to make people care. And so that is basically my job title, trying to make people care. And I've been hearing a lot in the last days in which I've been in Kosovo already about never again. And how do we stop war and violence in real time and not after the fact has been a concern of people. As somebody who's been writing and working both in Haiti and writing a lot about what is happening currently in Gaza, what I can tell you is that children are not just key to peacemaking where children are being killed or affected by war. They are key to peacemaking wherever they are in the world. And I'd say now more than ever, there is a huge generational gap in terms of how people get their information. What we are seeing now for the first time is youth in Canada and across the Western world and across the world seeing in real time children their age being killed, being burned alive, being maimed, having their limbs torn from their body. Canadian children are seeing that coming from Instagram accounts and TikTok's account in Gaza for the first time in human history. That changes the whole conversation about peacemaking and the role of children. Because children are curious, children are sensitive, and children have questions for their parents. And children are the motor to which the conversation about massacres are coming to dinner tables right now as we are speaking. And to the main question of this panel, what is the role of women in peacemaking? More often than not, at middle class, privileged, Western dinner table, it is still mothers who are having those conversations with their children about why. And the thing is, if you cannot explain to a 5-year-old or 8-year-old or 12-year-old why the world is letting children starve to death, then you cannot explain why the world is letting children starve to death. Period. And that is the start of people's awakening to the fact that never again actually means never again. That point of care, of mothers caring, is key to conversations who are happening about war with people who have zero personal experience of war. This is when mothers are seeing children being harmed on when they are seeing other women, other mothers having to go back to work, having to go about their daily lives when they've just had their own children being killed. Mothers recognize other mothers' courage, and this is how a global movement for peace actually begins to be structured. I want to also speak to the issue of healing, how those conversations, those internal family private conversations is also how the work of intergenerational healing happens. When children have questions, they not only have questions about what is happening in real time, they also have questions about what happened in their own family history, including my own as a Haitian Canadian, as somebody whose family is in Haiti. And so I want to conclude by speaking to the Haitian context, who I think will be of interest to a lot of people here in terms of what is the role that women play in peacemaking. Women are having an experience of violence and conflict in which even when you have fled the war or the conflict of the violence, you end up either internally or externally displaced in camps in which even more violence against women happen. So the refugee camps in which you're supposed to find refuge are actually sites of violence. And then you go, if you do experience that violence, to police or to peacekeeping missions. And the experience in Haiti is that often those international police officers or those peacekeeping missions can be part of the people who commit sexual violence as well. And there is often very little mechanism for stopping people who are supposed to be doing the peace to actually become part of the perpetrators themselves. And so I want to conclude by saying that I don't want to repeat what everybody has said, which is already brilliant about the role that women play in finding compromise, in negotiating peace. But I just want to add that if we want to find solution that is about reducing violence, you need to start from the view and the lived experience of women in conflict, fleeing conflicts. This is when you will see all the different steps of when and how danger happens in ways that you will not if you start from the bottom, the view from the sky and you're trying to go down to the ground. You need to start from the ground, and that is by including the experiences of women survivors everywhere. And I want to say this, women survivors are sometimes the people who are directly in the conflict, but sometimes it's just the people who've listened to the stories of their mothers and their grandmothers and who know better as a result of it. Because frankly, war is different everywhere, but it is the same, absolutely the same everywhere. And I want to thank people in Kosovo for welcoming me over the last couple of days, because although this is a very new experience for me, because of the experience that people have gone through here, it feels like we know each other and we get each other, and it feels like home. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily, so much. And I think, first of all, I want to strongly second your bringing us to today, because we commemorated Srebrenica from 30 years ago and the Kosovo experience from 25 years ago, the transitional justice work that is key to the healing of our generations, importance of Germany, and certainly research contributions. But it is the children of Gaza, of Sudan, Haiti, frankly, it's still not resolved, that for whom we also need to stand up, absolutely. So with that, and the limited time, you heard great introductory perspectives. We want to open it up for any questions or reflections. And I'm hoping there's somebody who's going to help us with a microphone around the room. And you have to either raise your hand or speak up, because we can't really see from down up here. Yes, please, we have a question here in the first row.
Hello, my name is Biljana. I'm the gender advisor of the OSCE mission in Pristina. I wanted to ask maybe our guest from Germany or any of you that would like to respond about the funding. We heard that when it comes to violence against women and particularly also children, in cases of emergencies like today we are facing in the world, one of the most important things is the financing. And as we know, the OCHA, currently the humanitarian assistance, has been losing money, and those money are hitting practically child protection services within the emergency areas and also women services for victims of gender-based violence. So this is my question for the humanitarian, but also how this will affect in development countries like the countries here in the region. So any one of you that wants to cover the question, or you have an opinion, I don't know, I just wanted to ask about the funding.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to take that, Ryan?
Thank you. Thank you. That is a great question, and funding is always a critical issue. We contribute a lot to the UN system in different fundings. I'm bad with numbers, so I have to find that. But also bilateral, we have, of course, for humanitarian crisis, we have funding, and we try to support through our different ministries, not only the foreign ministry, it's also the Ministry of Development, and help in emergencies. Funding sometimes is a difficult question because due to budget restraints, I'm quite openly here, to really finance, give direct fundings to grassroots organizations is complicated. It's not complicated because we can't do it. The administrative burden for the organizations is very, very difficult. So what we did in the last years was we tried to empower our embassies and missions worldwide with more money and to work directly on the ground with grassroots organizations, because it's more complicated for us back in Berlin than to do it directly. There's always more one can do, definitely. It's never enough. But I'm confident we are now with a new government, we are in a new budget cycle. This is always complicated because our regulation says we have to redo our entire budget for this year as also, but I'm confident that we can also do that in the future and support in the future.
Thank you, Biljana, for that question. And I just offering my perspective. While I'm glad you asked, and I'm glad that Germany hopefully will continue to contribute, I do also want to say as a perspective, not just from Bosnia, but I also know in Kosovo, for me, these national action plans and political policy commitments to our own countries will come where our own governments decide that parts of our own budgets need to be given to this. So Germany, don't get me wrong, don't stop, but it is also a call to the great example of the Kosovo government for the work you have done here on this issue, you personally and your government, the Madam President. In Bosnia, we struggle with the integration of this in the budget, but this agenda is not the donor agenda. This agenda was invented, if I may, by the mothers of Srebrenica, we saw this morning, by the mothers of Kosovo. They were the ones who showed the way of what it means to include women. And so that also has to come from our own as well. So I will call, if you don't mind, for each of you to offer a very brief closing statement to the great points you already shared.
Eto, za sam kraj neka bude da uloga žena u mirovnim procesima širom sveta ne bude samo simbolična, nego ona treba biti suštinska i žene trebaju biti bitan faktor i aktor u izgradnji mirovnih procesa.
Well, as a closing statement, I would like to appreciate the organization of these kind of forums, because I really want to recognize the value of all the discussions that are being presented in the panels, in the keynote speeches, and also individual conversation. I trust and I believe that knowledge sharing is the key for building sustainable peace. Through sharing the knowledge and experiences that we have had, even in the cases where we could not make it, already is a finding. So I think that Kosovo experience and also experiences in other countries like Bosnia and regrettably Ukraine and other war-torn societies are a knowledge hub that we need to learn from the past and in order not to repeat the future. So in that sense, I really consider that these kind of forums are of great contribution and we should provide all our insights in a sincere way so that we learn from each other. So thank you for being here again.
And I would really like to pick up exactly where the Honourable Judge just left off. I can only underline that events like that, where we can have a direct exchange about different experiences, are really key to that. Networks and sharing experience, also sharing best practices, is very valuable. We need to put them, of course, into action. And the Women, Peace and Security agenda with the national action plans is a wonderful instrument to do that, because we can work together on our national action plans. We can actually have some kind of fruitful exchange on that really has an impact on the ground with projects. Thank you.
I would like to invite everyone to look into yourselves, because so much of the conflict and exclusion originates from our biases and views. Critically examine yourself and what kind of values you transmit to your family and neighbors. This will have the most immediate impact. Thank you.
In Canada, we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission because of the harm, and actually it was called a cultural genocide that was done to Indigenous peoples in Canada through the violence of residential schools, stealing children away from families and destroying cultures. It's been over a decade now since the report has been published, and it's called Truth and Reconciliation. We're still working on reconciliation, but we're also still working on truth. What I want to say is that it takes time. It takes generations to get to the truth and to get to actual reconciliation when there is either war or colonization, in the case of Canada, and that we need to have really courageous conversations amongst ourselves in private life, in civil society, our conversations. We need to have the courage, not just to say the things that sound nice, but say the things that are uncomfortable. And we need to have the courage and the space to have those in media as well, not just report what happened today with the facts, but also provide context and analysis and have forums for actual conversations and discussions that are moderated in a way that's healthy and not ideally controlled by billionaires Americans. And so that is, I think, what is key, is to understand that if we don't have those conversations with each other, if we avoid the taboos, if we avoid the uncomfortable, there is only so much growth that we can do. And I will end by saying this. There is, and we've spoken a lot about trauma and post-traumatic stress syndrome and post-traumatic trauma, but there is also post-traumatic growth. And growth happens when you actually do the work. Otherwise, years pass, you get older, but you haven't gotten any wiser, and we are in the same trouble again as individual, but as mankind, basically. And so we need to do the work, and we need to actually have post-traumatic growth as nations and as human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And I will just conclude before I ask my panelists to join me for a photograph that, well, first of all, I want to thank you because everybody's going to the cinema these days to watch Tom Cruise. This was Mission Impossible because we made it at a lot of time. So great contribution, brilliant statements. Thank you all so much. And I believe the growth comes from exchanges like this. So very great conversation. Thank you so much. Hvala.